when one is reading about you, there are lots of big names coming up. It's conceptualism, it's avant-garde, it's futurism, etc. How you see all these big words that are associated with your name as a designer?
I think big words used around my work is something to do with other people's perception and explore ideas, and I guess that my work is really about exploring ideas and at the same time maybe proposing ways in which you can look at something at the same time. So I am not interested in labels at all. They are really sort of for other people. It's for other people to interpret my work, of course, and I can't tell them how to see my work. But I find words that reduce you to one thing, that's when it's worrying, when it reduces you to one thing, because I think that I'm probably quite a multifaceted person, and I don't want to be reduced to conceptual or intellectual or whatever.
Do you consider yourself as an avant-garde designer?
I mean, that's such a, the term avant-garde is so kind of misused. I find that, again, it's so conventional in a way, the idea that if someone's doing something vaguely interesting, or they're immediately avant-garde. I mean, of course, the term avant-garde in its original form was a term that, you know, evolved for a reason. I don't know, I feel I'm someone that, again, I'm so about the project I'm working on.
If you look, I'm always very suspicious of the word avant-garde because it's so overused, whether it be in art or in fashion or in design. But if you look back at the 20th century, fashion really had this avant-garde moment, like pushing forward social changes.
And that's what I meant.
This energy is still there in
Not
the
at all.
fashion industry?
Not at all. I feel that that's what I was saying, like the original sense of the word, the term avant-garde, was actually sort of there for a reason, and there was a movement, as you said, in the turn of the century, wasn't it? And last century, let's say, or turn of the 20th century. So for me, I think it is overused, and I do feel like people are applying a term to something that, like I said, they see as vaguely interesting. But I think what's happening these days is that you know, everything you do has somehow been done before, or there's a version of it or something, you know. So I find that the current environment that we're in, I feel a lot of creative people are more like curators more than originators. So it's about how you're putting existing information together rather than originating. For me personally, it wasn't like that. I really have to say that for me, I really wanted something new right from the beginning.
But that's a very postmodern statement, isn't it? When we say it has lost the big storytelling, it's just a very eclectic thing of putting things together and telling a new story without really creating something new.
It is, I mean, I guess you can even look at it as postmodernism if you like, I mean, if you want to give it that angle. But I feel it's also to do with, I mean, if I talk about fashion particularly, like the architecture and art, I find, you know, within this sort of art discourse, architectural discourse, everyone has their position and they are respected in that position. I think in fashion, there's no such discourse. Anyone could do anything, and a celebrity can become a designer. Whereas if a you know, a wife of a rich person you know, decides to become a designer, an architect or an artist, they'll be laughed at because it's not structured enough. And sometimes it's very saddening for me because I don't treat my field in that way. So I feel like why shouldn't fashion be taken as seriously as architecture or art? Or
as you mentioned, your approach in exploring human mankind through fashion, the media fashion, is sounds like a very scientific process.
Yeah.
So when you're designing, when you're developing a collection, is this like very lab atmosphere that you are doing experiments and trying out what might be the answer for the next?
It's not pretentious or anything, it's just genuine curiosity. I think that for some projects there has been sort of lab-like environments where we were looking at all sorts of data, filling up boards with stuff and whatever, and then I would sift through it all, and at the end you kind of come up with one thing sometimes from all that. It's not, our environment isn't lab-like when I talk about sort of looking at sort of almost the collection as you know, the work as world sciences. I don't mean that we walk around in white lab coats, and it's more that we look at data in such a way that will kind of translate nicely to something visual. Essentially, I'm a visually orientated person, and the research is there for me to do a more inspired product, you know. It's really for that reason. It's not so I can talk about it, because at the end of the day, what matters is the final thing, and the wearer doesn't care what my ideas are. The ideas are there so that I feel I can end up with something more interesting. But actually most of my time is spent on making like solid forms, you know, like I'm working on a sleeve head, I'm trying to eliminate seams, I'm working on a collar, I'm working on a coat that has no seams or whatever, you know. And that kind of thing really excites me. But I like kind of going through the process, because I feel that the more inspired the idea is in the beginning, the more principles it's going to create for me. And then in a way throughout the process I find symbols or my own ways in which I can represent some of the ideas. So I feel I'm kind of creating really my own kind of system in a way from the research. And I think that often the ones that are successful are the ones that somehow couldn't have happened without the process. But actually the process is there to get the, you know, to make the visual thing at the end better, hopefully.